And what is up? Welcome back. It's ChrisP from the Average Boys Podcast, and I am here at the CineSol Film Race and Festival here at the CEED Event Center, and I am here with a fabulous young lady, Tracy Hughes. Tracy, tell me about yourself.
Well, first of all, young. I like that. You're my best friend already.
How we doing?
I'm good. We just showed our film, Surviving Sex Trafficking. We had a good turnout. We just finished the question and answer session, and so I'm just happy to be a part of the CineSol Film Festival this year.
Now, the films that you are representing today have a huge impact in the community. They have a very strong point, talking about sex trafficking and bringing it to fruition, the awareness of it, educating people, giving people the opportunity to know about all this stuff about what's been going on with sex trafficking. How did you get involved in doing this type of film?
Good question. I get that question a lot.
Yeah, of course.
Because this is not my background. It is not the world that I came from. Mm-hmm. As a matter of fact, when I first started working in it, I was encouraged not to work in it because it's not because of my background. But I teach and educate young girls and women all around the world and have done women's conferences on self-esteem. And so from there, it went from self-esteem into some more serious topics of like abuse and things like that, into just a natural
like the organic movement.
I guess so. I guess that's the way you could
the
put
evolution.
It just evolved into working with human trafficking and survivors with human trafficking.
Okay, so you were doing self-esteem seminars. How did you get involved with this?
I wrote a book a long time ago, and the one chapter that they almost took out of the book was on identity and self-identity, and I fought to keep that chapter in there, and from that chapter I have been able to speak on that and speak to young girls and women of all ages, from 2 to 92, on who they are. I mean,
it's a very important matter. It's a very important matter.
And it's also the base of why the vulnerability of women that fall into victimhood or become victims of abuse of any kind, but being vulnerable is because they don't know who they are and they don't know their identity.
Excellent point. Tracy, tell us a little bit more about yourself, your humble beginnings.
I grew up in Oklahoma and made it to the Valley 35 years ago.
Okay,
and
so
I've
you
been here a long time.
Okay.
And then about 7 years ago, we started an organization. I took a trip to India to find out what they were doing for human trafficking. I taught a women's class on self-esteem, and part of that was covering human trafficking. And so out of that class, we took a trip to India to go find out what they were doing over there, how it worked, what the shelters were doing, what kind of programs worked for the victims, and then we were hoping to learn enough to bring it back to the Valley and implement those here in the Valley. And so I'm from a nonprofit background, and I'm just a mom. I'm just a wife that has 3 daughters, and a Christian coming from that perspective and coming back to the Valley as an outsider, not in law enforcement, not on that side at all, just as a citizen, super concerned, and as a mother with 3 daughters.
During that time, how did you find out about that program that was going on in India? Like, what got you over there?
Again, the book and doing the seminars that I had done around the world. I had spoken in Kenya and different places around the world.
So you had already been around.
So I'd doing world travel on women's ministry. Women's seminars on self-esteem.
Very nice.
And so that just was the next step.
Very, very cool. Well, it's super honorable of a way to dedicate your life, and because time is the only thing us as human beings have on this earth. So for you to dedicate that time to victims of sex abuse or trafficking or kidnapping or anything like that, that's a super honorable life to tell. I just got to say, I'm super honored just to be in your presence, just to know that you've dedicated a life, a large sum of your life to this.
I don't really see it that way. I see it as I'm a mother of 3 daughters, and I can't imagine anything worse happening to them, that their freedom's being taken away from them, from what they eat in the morning to what clothes that they put on, and to not have a voice. And so God's just expanded my girls to include a whole lot more than my own daughters.
You're a warrior, man. You are a warrior, Tracy. So tell me, the story that you've written, the one that you were showing today.
Yes.
You told me earlier, this was off, of course, we spoke a little bit off camera.
Yes.
You told me that this was a part 2.
Yes.
So you had a part 1 to this.
I have been involved with the group that produced it, so the directors of it. And the first movie it was actually a documentary in 2017 that came out called Stopping Traffic.
Okay.
And it won all kinds of awards in 2017, and they wanted to do a follow-up movie. But hopefully in 2019 was when it was supposed to come out.
Of course.
And it ended up being Stopping Traffic 2 was what it was supposed to be, the second part. The first part was very much on education of general public of what human trafficking is, what it looks like, the underground, how do girls get into it, how do they get out of it, all the general basics of human trafficking. This one was going to be focused strictly on survivors and their stories and shelters and how those survivors in the long term come out of it on the other side. And so at the very end, the name got changed from Stopping Traffic 2 to Surviving Sex Trafficking.
Okay. Very, very cool. When it comes to the idea of sex trafficking, how big of a topic is that when it comes to the South Texas area?
It is something that a lot of people in South Texas don't believe that happens here. When I go and speak in different groups, and I went to Boys and Girls Clubs, I went into schools, we went into churches, we went into all different kinds of genres talking about it. And the most general overall feeling is that surely that doesn't happen here.
Okay.
And I can tell you that is not true.
Yeah.
It does happen here, and it happens here a lot.
Really?
What it doesn't happen is you don't hear victims coming forward and running up to Border Patrol or law enforcement officers going, help me, I'm a trafficked victim. That doesn't happen. But we do have cases. And in the Valley in general, there's 3 different groups of trafficked girls. I say girls, it happens to boys too.
Oh, really?
And
Okay.
the statistics used to be 85-15. Those are more now 25-75, of 75% girls versus 25% males that are being trafficked.
I get you.
But the 3 groups we have our local girls that are being trafficked online, just like all over the United States that is happening. And we also are seeing where children are selling children. So we have the first case in the United States where a girl sold a younger girl. She was the actual trafficker here in the Valley. That happened here.
That happened here?
Yes, it did.
What? I don't even hear about this. Oh, my God.
Yes, and so we have our normal trafficking, just like the rest of the United States. Then we have the immigrants that are coming across, the migration and all of that because of our border issue. So we have foreign nationals that are being trafficked through our border, not smuggling. There's a huge difference in human smuggling and human trafficking. And human trafficking is when you are sold for commercial exchange of money for a sexual act, not movement of people across from one border to another. That's smuggling. But with human trafficking, there is a commercial sexual act where some exchange of value happens. Yeah. So we have the immigrants coming across, we have our local, and then we actually have girls and women that have been imported here. We had a case not too long ago where 2 girls from Louisiana were brought here by a couple, a husband and a wife, brought here, and they were trafficked here in the Valley.
In this region?
Yes, in this region.
Jeez.
So we have imported girls that are coming down here. We have a large commercial sexual business. Sexual-oriented businesses are called SOBs because of where we live. We have the island, anytime you have that. We have what used to be across the border called Boys Town over in Reynosa. And now with the violence in Mexico, the cartel has brought a lot of that to this side of the border. So there's a huge demand for it on this side. And you've got a vulnerable population that's coming across the border, no identity, no papers, nobody's tracking them, and you've got a perfect storm.
Is the intricacy of the way that these people run their I guess like an empire, like a sex trafficking empire, is it very intricate? Like, is it very engineered to be like, you're not going to find us, you're not going to bust us? Or is it because the way I see it is like, I mean, when I hear sex trafficking or sex smuggling or human trafficking, human smuggling, I always consider it like the way I've seen it like in Hollywood. Yeah. Where it's like, it's very flamboyant. It's very like, oh, get in this bus. And
girls are kidnapped.
Yeah, it's very simple. It's very simple in meaning. But is there like intricacy? I can't, man, that word is so hard in my head, but it's there. Never mind. Is it very detailed? Because of the fact that I ask is because, of course, Facebook you always see these weird like posts where it's like, oh, if you see this rubber band on your antenna, be very careful. That is a sex trafficking, kidnapping thing. Is it very intricate like that?
1% actually have find themselves as a victim of kidnapping into sex trafficking. That means 99% are not.
Wow.
So what we see in the movies and Hollywood is not the way that most victims get into it.
Okay.
Some of them are just vulnerable teenagers that are sold by their boyfriends. That's how a lot of them get into it. Like I said, here in the Valley, we have the migrants. They find themselves vulnerable. And many of them were sold from their countries of origin before they even make it through this point here in McAllen, Texas.
Jeez.
And then they are sold and kept with the group in stash houses, and then they will be separated out when they go from here to Houston or here to San Antonio in the ranch country.
Jeez, man.
So yes, and they are pre-sold. So it's not just, so it's from their country of origin to their coyotes to all of the different people, and they all have their different, they're transferred from people to people to people. And so people that think it's not happening, it only happens in Chicago and New York and Las Vegas, that is not true. They have to get to those points, and many of the victims that are trafficked in the United States came through this one point right here in McAllen, Texas, before they're shipped all around the rest of the United States.
How has been the audience reaction to your new film?
Really good. It's intense, and so I know it's hard to watch for just a normal person that this is just something they happen to stumble across. They know, they've heard it, but it is intense hearing the stories, but very good and educational, eye-opening. It's the number one thing we keep hearing, that it has been eye-opening to see.
Good stuff, good stuff. Here at the CineSol Film Festival, you got to debut, well, not debut it, you had already debuted your film a while back.
It started back in March. They released it in March of this year.
So the acceptance here at the CineSol Film Festival, what's next for you from this position, from the CineSol to like a next film?
The next film, that's a great question. I don't know where we go from here. I know right now they're so busy producing the channels and, following up on leads of where they go. 2 days ago, they just released it on Starz Network.
Nice, very well.
And so it got picked up on Starz.
Big network.
And so there'll be more and more networks that pick it up from here. And so I know they're focused on that. But as far as there's going to be a follow-up. I'm not sure exactly what the focus is going to be, but I have no doubt there will be a follow-up.
And what is the organization?
Stopping Traffic, stoppingtraffic.org. You can go.
So that's
to
the actual name of it.
That is the actual original group, and that produced this one also.
And how do you guys get your funding to continue your resources and research into this?
Funding has come from everywhere. Just from my personal organization that I have, it was all private funding. But for the film, for the most part, it also was private donors and private funding that have done it.
Very, very well. Being a part of this lifestyle, how has that changed you as a parent?
As a parent and now a grandparent, I tell you what, I know the signs, and I know that I want to raise strong girls in this generation that know when they're approached and know when someone is trying to take advantage of them, that they have the skill set to say, no, that is not for me. I am not going to go there and do that. And if I've done that, I've done my job.
What's your, I guess I would say, what is your list of things that you would encourage the next person, like when it comes to dealing with these kind of situations? It
would be, if you see something, say something. Almost all of the tips, again, I'm going to go back to, you don't hear them coming up and running up and saying, help me, help me. It is a tip that has come from a neighbor that sees something wrong, something is not right, a friend, they realize something's changed in their friend, and they will talk to the parents or report it to police or whatever it is. It's almost always coming from a community member that sees something that is wrong and speaks up. Most people are fearful of coming forward because they don't want to get involved. They don't know if it's who's involved, and they don't want them coming after them. But if we're not brave enough to speak up when we see something, we're never going to get help for these victims, because they're not coming forward to get help for themselves.
To get help in the first place.
Correct.
What kind of pushback do you get when it comes to doing something like this? I know it's a weird question because
no, it's actually
is
not.
It really?
It's
oh, okay.
really not.
Because in my mind, I would assume that everybody would be so for it because of the fact that you're doing your due diligence to help protect people.
Yes.
But in the aspect of it, like I know there has to be some kind of pushback with the way our communities are nowadays. The political push, the genre, everything kind of correlates with the idea of if you have an opinion, someone always will basically have an opinion in the opposite direction.
Yes, and so the biggest, two things actually, going into, not really lobby, but as a representative and going into speaking in Austin to both sides of the group, Democrats and Republicans.
Of course.
They welcome you with both them arms. Like you said, everyone agrees. This topic is non-alienating.
Yeah.
Everybody agrees this is a bad thing.
Yes.
So when I would come in, both sides are like, yes, please, this is not something that half my people are going to get upset over. So that part has been very welcoming as far as law enforcement, Austin, all of the policy making, all of that has been on the same board.
Okay.
I will have to say the biggest pushback we have had in a couple of areas has been that doesn't really happen, just flat out denial.
Of course, yeah.
That doesn't happen. And a little bit from law enforcement sometimes.
Really?
Of they don't want to be told how to do their job, or there's a little bit, and that's not just law enforcement, it is anybody in general has the idea that if there's prostitution involved, they chose that life, and that they're dirty, and that they're
makes sense.
they chose it. They don't deserve the help. I'm not gonna waste my time, and then they're gonna go right back to him, and you know, and it's understandable because it's messy and it's not easy. It's not clean cut cases.
Yeah.
It's not easy. So that I would say has been the biggest part. Surprise for me.
And of course, I got to ask, what has been the pushback of you being that you're a religious person, saying that you're a Christian openly? Like, how do you get that pushback in that community also? Like, how do you get it when it comes to adding the religious
This is
aspect?
not a Sunday brunch ladies topic
Yeah,
that
I was
I
gonna
get
say,
to go in. They don't want to have their Pollyanna world interrupted. They like that life and they want to keep that world. And so when I come in and want to speak on this topic, a lot of people don't want to hear it because now if they hear it, then it messes up, well, I have to do something about it now. And so they prefer to keep that as a different world. It's an underworld. They don't want to know about that. Wow. Unfortunately, this world is happening at the same time.
At the same exact
their
time.
world. So you got two worlds happening at the same time, side by side.
Yeah, it doesn't matter if they ignore it, it's still going to happen.
That's exactly right.
And Tracy, where can we find you on the internet, social media? Where can we find you in case we need more information about this?
We have a Facebook page called tamarstapestry.org.
Oh, nice.
And then I also have, that would probably be the best place to get a hold of me.
And how do you say it again?
Tamar's Tapestry.
Tamar's Tapestry.
tamarstapestry.org.
Very cool. Facebook, Instagram, and
On
social media?
Facebook, yes.
Very cool, guys. You heard it
you'll find
first.
us.
Tracy Hughes, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
And I hope that your journey continues and you have the strength and you continue to be that warrior.
Thank you.
You're amazing. You're an amazing individual.
Thank you for having me.
Guys, thank you so much for tuning in the show. We appreciate every one of you guys. We'll see you guys again next time. Laters.